Welcome to this week's video activity and lesson called Blog, Blogger, and Blogging. We're going to continue our dive into genre by taking our definition and inquiring about and composing in the particular genre called blogging. So just as you get ready, make sure that you have everything that you need in order to take notes. That means paper, pens, pencil. You might even have a split screen up with a Word document as you walk through this particular lesson. Our guiding questions for this particular video include: what is a blog? What are the modes of communication? What is multimodality? And what are the conventions of a blog post? And these are the questions that you will want to think about as we walk through this video. And these are also the questions that will guide your note-taking process. So these are the key terms that we've been focused on. Last week, we looked specifically at genre, which we will again look at this week, but we are going to also loop in media and modes this week as we relate it to blogging. So just as a quick review, what is a genre and how does a genre come into being? Last week, we talked about using the following definition. We said that genre is a dynamic response to and construction of recurring situation, one that changes historically and in different social groups, that adapts and grows as the social context changes. In other words, we have this socially constructed dynamic and fluid response to a specific situation. And that is what begins to form genres. So genres construct and respond to situations. They are possible responses that writers choose and even combine to suit their situations. So in other words, last week our focus was really to define genre and to look at why we would want to understand the idea of genre in our writing. We talked about the fact that genres have specific conventions, things that audience will expect when they engage with a certain genre. So I want to take that definition and that understanding of genre and apply it to blogs. So first we want to think about what a blog is. Coined somewhere between 1995 and 2000, a blog, which is shortened from weblog, is an online journal or informational website containing the writer's own experiences, observations, opinions, etc. So it is a form of social media. And what I want us to do as we look at the conventions of a blog is kind of think back to the conversation we had last week regarding the other social media platforms such as tweets or Instagram, the examples that you posted on the discussion board, and think about how these conventions are similar and or different to the conventions of a Twitter or an Instagram. Blogs could be personal or they can be company blogs, and has become integrated into the social media driven modern day culture. So again, blogs are something that is considered social media. Blogs are usually updated quite often, with the most recent blog being shown first on the website. So it is a journal or information that's updated quite regularly. And these updates are in the form of what's called a blog post. And that's where we're going to kind of situate ourselves for this particular activity, is we want to look specifically at the blog post. That means we're going to be looking at a specific journal entry for a blog and looking at the conventions of that. So before we get to that part, let's think about how blogs post or a blog post communicates to its audience. So what does it use? And for that, we want to understand the different modes of communication. So remember, a blog is a website. And so a blog post is inside that website. So now let's think about the modes of communication that might be used in that space. But first, let's look at the different modes that we have. and think about how we would define them. So the first thing we want to think about is, what is a mode? A mode is simply a means of communication. And as you can see over on the wheel on the right-hand side of your screen, we have 5 modes of communication that we're going to focus on: visual, oral, gestural, spatial, and linguistic. So let's just take a couple of minutes and define these modes. When we think about linguistic, it refers to written or spoken words. This includes word choice, the delivery of written or spoken text, the organization of words into sentences and paragraphs, and the development and coherence of words and ideas. When we think about visual, this refers to images and characters that people see. This mode includes color, layout, style, size, and perspective. When we think about oral, this is focused on sounds, including things like music or sound effects, ambient noises, silence, tone of voice in spoken language, volume of sound, emphasis, and accent. Gestural. This refers to the way movement is interpreted. These are things like facial expressions, hand gestures, body language, and interaction between people are all gestural modes. Then we have spatial. Spatial refers to the physical arrangement or organization and proximity of text and images. It also can refer to the navigation bar on a website and how a user interprets and navigates the web. So think about spatial as how things are arranged in a particular space and how that might communicate something. When we think about the idea of a medium or plural media, we look at it as a channel or system through which communications are conveyed. For example, if we want to communicate in linguistic mode, we might choose the medium of print. If we want to communicate in the oral mode, we might choose the medium of a podcast. So a medium is just a way in which we are going to use the different modes of communication. And then we have this idea of multimodality. So if we understand modes as being the ways in which we communicate, which we just discussed 5 of them, multimodality is the use of several modes to create communication, which means that we use more than one. And one thing that we want to understand, and this is according to Kress, who writes a lot about multimodality, is that each mode does a specific thing. Multimodality can tell us what the modes are, but it cannot tell us about the difference in style. It has no means to tell us what the difference might mean. So in other words, we can see or we can engage with or dissect the different modes that are being used, but the next step that we have to do is we have to look at how those modes are communicating to us. So how do we interpret these modes? Let's take the example of a meme for just a second. So what is a meme? A meme is spread via internet, or an internet meme is. Memes have been around for a long time, but the most familiar that we are perhaps come to mind include the internet memes, or the digital way of circulating this cultural moment, right? And it takes an image and then it juxtaposes or puts text, usually in phrases, sometimes ironic, where the image and the text are playing with each other to create humor. For example, this particular meme is in reference to the current moment that we're in with the COVID-19 virus, and spurring this rush of people buying out all of the toilet paper. So this is just a play on that, of internet, where you're buying something. How do you wish to pay? Visa, MasterCard, or toilet paper, right? And what we can see is that we've got this text, but we've also got the juxtapositioning of the different modes of payment. This is a familiar image to us because we shop on the internet. We've seen this before, where you take your cursor and you click on what you choose. Another one would be something like this, right? So look at the different modes of communication. You've got visual, you've got linguistic, you've got spatial, you've got gestural. How do we have gestural? Well, take a look at the cat's face, right? Look at the expression. The expression is then in turn being interpreted by the words. Why are the annoying servants staying in my home all day now? And this is again a play on the situation that we're in with COVID-19, where we're socially distancing or isolated a bit. So what you have is you have an expression on a cat's face, and of course the cat may not be thinking that. However, uh, if you're familiar with cats, and in many cases you could certainly see a cat thinking or saying something like this, playing on the fact that for cats, humans are merely the servants meant to bring them anything that their heart desires. So again, it's taking an image, overlaying some text and phrases to create the humorous moment, but it's also current and relevant because outside of this current moment, this particular phrase may not make sense or have the same context that it does now. Finally, we see this last one, and this is another example, right? So we still, again, we've got the visual, we've got textual, we've got spatial of how the words are arranged on there, um, and it's using a familiar image of the movie It, where the clown is in the storm drain trying to coax the child down there. And instead, he's saying, Pennywise is saying, I got hand sanitizer down here, trying to coax them down in this current moment of people buying out the store of hand sanitizer. So Pennywise is now using that phrase to encourage that person to get in the storm drain with them. So again, you've got a meme, and so when you put those different modes together, the visual, the textual, the gestural in the case of the cat, and the spatial, all of those are meant together to communicate the overall message. So when we think about taking that information, the idea of genre, the idea of modes and multimodality, let's go back to the blogs now. And the first question we ask is, what can blogs be about? Well, for the most part, blogs can be about anything that you would like them to be about, right? If we think about blogs as being part of social media, what is the purpose of the social media? And that is to circulate information, that is to perhaps gain an audience or a community of people with which you share different information. So let's take a look at a blog for just a minute. And again, remember, blogs can be about absolutely anything. So this particular blog is called The Blissful Mind. Um, and it says, are you a creative overthinker who talks yourself out of everything? You've come to the right place, my friend. So if I go to this person's blog or look at the blog posts, you can see that if we look at it as being journal entries, you can see all of these different journal entries that we have, with the most recent being at the top. And the most recent one is 10 productivity tips for working from home. Um, and then you have a little bit of a tagline here. Working from home is the dream, but it has its downfalls. I'm talking about you, distractions. Here are 10 tips to help you work from home more productively. So we're going to click on that and open up the blog or the blog post. And we're just going to kind of walk through. We're going to come back to this a little bit, but I just want you to kind of look at and see what you might notice about the blog post. And again, we're going to come back to this in just a couple of minutes. There we have the 10 working tips from home productivity tips. They're numbered. All right, so that is a blog post. Let's go back to our um, PowerPoint here, and let's start looking at and dissecting the conventions of a blog post, right? So a blog post has typically a blog headline, And what this does is give some indication of what the blog is about. It engages the audience into wanting to click and read the blog. So it should pull people in. Compelling lead. It's the first sentence or short paragraph of the blog and should compel visitors to want to read your second paragraph. It should continue to draw the audience into the blog post, right? So we've got blog headline and we've got a compelling lead. Useful subheads, or what we would consider to be subtitles. And these serve three purposes. They break up the type to make the page more visually appealing. They help your reader navigate the important sections and boost the search engine optimizer or SEO. And this just means that the subtitles are going to be used or could be used as keyword searches. There's an informative and engaging body, and it's really the meat and potatoes of your blog post. It's the reason or the bigger pieces of your blog post, right? Appealing graphics. Remember, this is a website. This is in a digital web space, which means blogs use a variety of modes to engage their audience. So things like graphics, images, fonts, color schemes are all important to the communicative properties of your blog post. There's a powerful call to action that happens with a blog. And again, remember, this is interaction, it's social media. So you're wanting your audience to somehow engage with or do something with the information. And the call to action articulates what action you as the writer would like your audience to take. It includes things such as commenting on the blog post. It might ask the audience to read another article or post on the blog. It might ask the audience to check out a product or service. It might ask the audience to share contact information to kind of begin to create a community. And then finally, typically blogs include links that help the audience engage in the information. It allows you to provide opportunities for the audience to dig deeper into something specific. So instead of muddying the waters of that blog with all of the information, you can simply provide them the option to go to this other link if they'd like more information about something. So it allows you to extend the discussion by providing the audience with a choice to move outside the blog for further information. So let's take a look at the list of the conventions of a blog post. So we've got blog headline, compelling lead, useful subheads, informative and engaging body, appealing graphics, powerful call to action, relevant links, whoops, and relevant links. So let's take another look at the blog that we just looked at, and let's see if we can check off our list if this particular blog has that. So I'm going to go back to that 10 productivity for just a second. So before I even click on it, let's see what it has. Does it have a blog headline? Absolutely. 10 productivity tips for working from home. Well, this is very relevant to our times. In fact, this is her newest blog post. Um, is there a compelling lead? Well, this is our compelling lead. Working from home is the dream, but it has its downfalls. I'm talking about you, distractions. Here are 10 tips to help you work from home more productively. So again, she uses that to engage the audience. So we're going to click on that. So far we've got a blog headline and we've got a compelling lead. Let's see if we have an informative and engaging body. Well, it says, I've always dreamed of working from home. The thought of not having to commute and being able to work from the comfort of my home, it sounded like bliss. And let's be real, working from home is the dream for a lot of people. The downside is, so she goes into the different distractions that we may have, and she's referencing the COVID-19, so she's referencing the relevancy of the particular post, but then she's getting to her 10 working from home productivity tips. So here's where she continues with an informative and engaging body, right? And notice what she does. She numbers them and she puts them in bold so you can see the short version, and then she goes into explanation. She also has links, so you could get more tips how to plan your daily schedule for success. So you could come over here to this other particular blog that she's sending you to. And she does that throughout. So she'll give you the tip in kind of a shorter format. She'll explain it in a little more depth, and then she'll give you a related post or some way to get more information. So far we've got blog headline, compelling leads, useful subheads, right? She's got these great subheads, informative, engaging body. Let's look at appealing graphics for just a second. What do we see throughout? Well, she creates a very clean looking blog. She uses a lot of white space, and her visuals or her images all kind of take on that same feel, right? With the pink and the white with the computer. So the images are relevant to the topic that she is discussing. The other visuals we can look at are things like her subheads or her subtitles. One, they are repeated in that they're numbered, they're bolded, they're the same font, the same size. And then in this particular text, notice how she provides a space in between there and then provides the paragraph in smaller and not bolded. And then she'll throughout give different um, images that relate to where it sits in the text. So I'd say she does a pretty good job of creating some appealing graphics, right? She certainly has a lot of different links to different places that you have an opportunity to go into. But what about that last one? The powerful call to action. I wonder, there we go. So she finishes with number 10 and she says, what are your working from home productivity tips? If you have any working from home productivity tips of your own, feel free to share them in the comments. There's the call to action. She wants to hear from other people with regards to their working from home productivity tips. And so you're able to come down here and leave a response. So there is the specific call to action. So if we were to look at and walk back to our list of the 7 conventions of a blog post, I would say that we could most definitely check off each and every one of these as being a part of that particular blog. So now it's your turn. You're going to head back to campus to complete the module. Remember that you can come back to this video anytime you need to for a refresher on the information. One of the first things that you're going to do is do a quick activity that allows you to further engage with the information from this video in the form of a quick multiple choice activity. And then you'll move over to beginning to create your own blog post, understanding the conventions that we just discussed. So have a wonderful, wonderful time looking at this information and beginning to think about your own blog post. Further information will be in Canvas regarding that. So remember, use this video anytime you need a refresher on the information. And that's all, folks.